Can even see it.
Bells and whistles.
You ready?
Yeah, we're ready. We're okay, and we'll have good numbers Tuesday for the meeting.
Council meeting's now in session. I'll call the meeting to order. And we'll get started.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 3 Use Provisions, Section 3.3 Table of Permitted Uses, and Section 3.6.1 Permitted Temporary Uses, Item G, Mobile Food Retail Vending.
Mr. Mayor, I would move first reading of the ordinance.
Yeah, second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding that this, and Mr. Parker can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is essentially a second first reading given to the mobile food truck amendments to the UDO that we voted on at a previous special meeting, and that there are no substantive changes.
Really no substantive changes. I don't think the 10 o'clock was in there. It was before council. That was an oral amendment. It wasn't entirely exactly what went before the planning commission. So I figured the best way to clean it up so there wouldn't be any problem is count this as first reading, and then we can have the second reading in August or whenever council chooses to have it. And in the meantime, there's not been a problem with the neighborhood not being able to have food trucks come in, so.
Good. Okay, all in favor of this signify by raising your right hand saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, ayes carry. Number 3.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 1, Purpose and Applicability, Section 1.5, Scope of Authority, and Section 1.9, Transitional Provisions.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Mayor, I'd just like to say I'll be voting nay. I just got this. I was out of town all last week, hadn't had time to look at it. And when I called staff to try to get some input, apparently they hadn't received it either.
Okay. All in favor of this signify by raising your right hand saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Nay.
Okay, ayes carry. 4.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, Districts, Section 2.3, General Lot and Building Provisions, Section 2.5, Mixed Use District Standards, Section 2.7, Conventional District Standards, and Section 2.10, Planned Development Districts.
Mr. Mayor, I would move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor of this signify by raising your right hand saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Nay.
Motion carried. Number 5.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 3, Use Provisions, Section 3.3, Table of Permitted Uses, Section 3.4, Conditional Use Provisions, Section 3.5, Accessory Uses and Structures, and Section 3.6, Temporary Uses.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Not all in favor, signify by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. 6, Ms. Beth.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 4, Site and Building Design Guidelines, Section 4.2, Design Guidelines, Section 4.3, Residential Building Design Guidelines, Section 4.4, Mixed-Use Building Design Guidelines, Section 4.5, Suburban Commercial Building Design Guidelines, and Section 4.6, Industrial Building Design Guidelines, and 4.7, Civic Institutional Building Design Guidelines.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
That.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion, signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. 7,
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 5, Subdivision and Infrastructure Standards, Section 5.2, Applicability and Administration, Section 5.3, Required Improvements and Coordination for All Development, Section 5.4, Land Suitability, Section 5.6, Street Classification and Design, Section 5.7, Street Construction Standards, Section 5.8, Access and Connectivity, Section 5.9, Traffic Impact Analysis, Section 5.10, Easements and Dedications, and Section 5.11, Surveying, Inspections, and Warranties.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move first reading of the ordinance.
second. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
Nay.
Motion carried.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 6, Parks and Open Space, Section 6.2, Dedication and Conservation Requirements, Section 6.3, Payment in lieu of dedication and conservation credit for parks and greenway connections, Section 6.4, Park Standards, Section 6.5, Open Space Standards, and Section 6.6, Ownership and Maintenance.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move first reading of the ordinance.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
I've got one question. Maybe we can deal with it a little later, but the section 6.2.2, credit toward required park dedication. I'm trying to figure out how we would actually credit that to the development. Could somebody speak on that, Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, which section was it? 6.3 point what?
6.2.2, credit toward required park dedication. It's actually 6.2, dedication and conservation requirements.
Okay. Yeah, the change in that was that we allowed a credit of 50%, up to 50% of a required park space dedication for sharing a property boundary, and I changed that to 100% in this draft. So if you share a property boundary and there was a specific parking requirement, and you could meet that requirement by sharing with an adjacent piece of property, you wouldn't, that would be all you have to do.
Okay. All right. I just want to clarify that. So we change it from 100%.
Put that in.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Not all in favor, signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise.
Nay.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 7, Parking and Driveways, Section 7.1, Purpose and Intent, Section 7.2, Applicability, Section 7.3, Vehicle Parking Location, Section 7.4, Required Parking, Section 7.5, Bicycle Parking Standards, Section 7.6, Parking Lot Design Standards, and Section 7.7, Driveways and Off-Street Parking Access.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move first reading of the ordinance.
Second. All right, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Nay.
Ayes carry.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 8, Tree Preservation, Landscaping, and Screening, Section 8.2, Applicability, Section 8.3, Tree Protection, Section 8.5, Parking Area Landscaping, Section 8.6, Screening and Buffers, Section 8.7, Installation and Maintenance Standards, and Section 8.8, Administration.
Mr. Mayor, I move first reading of the ordinance.
Second. Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Nay.
Ayes carry.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 9, Lighting, Section 9.2, Applicability, and Section 9.3, Design Standards.
Mr. Mayor, I move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? If not, all in favor of that signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carry.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 10, Signs, Section 10.3, Residential Signs, Section 10.4, Mixed-Use Commercial and Industrial Signage, Section 10.5, Changeable Copy Signs, Section 10.6, Sign Illumination, Section 10.7, Temporary Signs, Section 10.8, Signs that do not require a permit, Section 10.9, Prohibited Signs, and Section 10.10, Administration.
Mr. Mayor, I move first reading of the ordinance.
Second. All right, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of this signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Nay.
Ayes carry.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 12, Nonconformities, Section 12.3, General Provisions and Procedures, Section 12.4, Nonconforming Uses, Section 12.5, Nonconforming Structures, Section 12.6, Nonconforming Uses, and Section 12.9, Nonconforming Sites.
Mr. Mayor, I move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Nay.
Ayes carry.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 13, Administration and Procedures, Section 13.2, Administrative Officials and Agencies, Section 13.3, Boards and Commissions, Section 13.5, Application Requirements, Section 13.7, Administrative Permits, Section 13.8, Design Review, Section 13.9, Land Development and Subdivision, Section 13.10, Adjustments and Appeals, and Section 13.11, Amendments and Other Legislative Actions.
Mr. Mayor, I move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Nay.
Ayes carry.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 14, Violations and Enforcements, and Section 14.2, Enforcement.
Mr. Mayor, I move first reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, sir. I'm not going to pretend that I know enough to wipe out what a large number of people that make their living and have studied their lives to create these ordinances to guide the town. And I do realize that this council wants to do what it wants to do regardless of advice. And I assumed you had the votes because I was never contacted about any of this. I had kind of hoped that this would be a workshop so we could go over some of it like we always do. But even staff was ignored. So I'm going to continue voting no. And I think us disassembling what seems to be what has been done over the last 8, 10 years is going in the wrong direction and is not going to help people to feel secure and safe coming into the town when we keep changing everything every couple days. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might make a comment, we have, if I'm not mistaken, pending an ordinance to repeal this entire UDO. We've had first reading on that. We've gotten, and these proposed changes are, in my mind, in lieu of that. I think we've all been convinced that if we go back to what we had before the UDO started, we've got that different structure of the ordinance. It would be difficult to build on it. What council is doing now with this first reading is preserving the UDO structure, but changing what I believe is some of the more egregious parts of it that interfere with private property rights and are otherwise just senseless. So that's my take on it. This is the first reading only, and there should be plenty of time for this thing to be fully read, and I don't expect, it's not perfect. It's a long way from being perfect. But, you know, we've got an amendment process, and I expect it to be amended, and I hope it will be amended. Both the new changes that are proposed and stuff that have not been addressed yet. I think we'd welcome staff input or any member of council to go ahead and get this thing correct. But this is not the final chapter. This is a start of the process to get something that we can work with, staff can work with, and it's fair to our citizens.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to echo Councilman Bailey's comments. I believe it was in March. I know it was in late winter, early spring. Anyway, we did give first reading to an ordinance to repeal the UDO and put in place the October 2019 zoning, planning, development ordinances. The thought behind that was the UDO was too big, too complex, too heavy-handed in the favor of government against individuals to be salvaged, and that we would go back to the old ordinances, and we invited staff and the public to tell us what was essential to the UDO that we could incorporate into the 2019 ordinances, and we just never got that. We, you know, April came, May, June, we just never got anything like that. Part of the reason why I supported repeal and replace was thought that what's before us now was going to be too complex, too time-consuming, and the simplest thing to do was to repeal and replace and build upon that. We knew that there was, you know, we knew that this was the direction that this council wanted to go, but we didn't necessarily have the support, the staff support, frankly, to get the information that we wanted, which is what's essential about the UDO. What Councilman Bailey has done, I believe, in these ordinances, and of course the Planning Commission will get it, we'll have a public hearing, it'll probably get amended to some degree before second reading, but what as I read this, what this has done is it's stripped the UDO down to its essence, to what it's really trying to accomplish, but taking away the kind of heavy-handedness of government over the individual. So while I'm certainly open to further amendments and may have some of my own, this is a huge step in the right direction for this town. And you know, again, I just thought that this work, getting us here by amending the UDO like this, I just thought it was going to be too time-consuming and too complex to do. But again, I've probably underestimated Councilman Bailey.
Let me say a couple things. I thought the UDO was too restrictive, particularly in my district where we are trying to preserve certain areas of my district. And I thought we were losing the flexibility that people had in the past that built that district. And so I felt we needed to change, and I'm glad to see these changes because it's bringing it back to something simplistic where people can do what they want to with their property, whether they can afford a larger home or whether they can afford a small home or a mobile home or whatever. And so I think it would be much more satisfying to the people in some parts of my district. Now, we've got some parts where people vary as far as their incomes and their wealth. But then we've got areas where people are just trying to get along and have a place to stay and feel comfortable, and they want to be able to do what they want with their property to provide for their families and their loved ones. So that's why I'm in favor of the changes.
Anybody else got anything? I think it's a great idea what we're doing. I totally disagree with Mr. Jackson. I think it's all about property rights. And I'm a big property rights person. The UDO as it was written is just takes away property rights, and, in my opinion. And I think before we get done, like Mr. Bailey said, we'll be back and forth with our staff. And I think in the end, we'll have a good product that'll benefit all our citizens. This is just, like Mr. Bailey said, this is just a first reading. And I'm sorry Mr. Jackson didn't get to read his book that we got him and get a little bit more familiar with it. But you got to have change, and it wasn't just a 3-day change. I don't know where you got that from, but we've had this change since last week, and it was easy reading because it wasn't that much. But anyway, he chose not to read it, and he voted no on everything, but the rest of it voted yes. So hopefully the majority knows what they're doing, and we're doing the right thing. And that's all I can say. We'll get with our staff. We'll be looking for some feedback from them. And in the end, like I say, we'll have a good ordinance that will work better than what we had before.
Still got a motion on chapter 14, I believe.
We got a motion?
We still got a motion pending on approving the chapter 14 amendments.
Oh, okay. All in favor of this motion, signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
Motion, meeting's adjourned.